welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about two flawed satires in the sci-fi vein that I kind of enjoy, even though both of them have a real problem in the direction. So these are Demolition Man and Starship Troopers 3 Marauder. So we'll start with Demolition Man, which is the most famous of the two. This was a mega budget production produced by Joe Silver. Stars Sylvester Stallone, Sandra Bullock, and Wesley Snipes. It was Bullock's first big film, and it was during that time Snipes actually got big studio films before the Blade stuff happened, and he started making these kind of dodgy, low budget films. It was Stallone during his comeback period when he made Cliffhanger, made this. He was doing a bunch of big studio films. Mainly because his films did well overseas. I mean, his films at this point were not doing great in America, but they were doing well overseas. This was his film that he did not long before Judge Dredd, which was not as good as this one. and this one has a lot of problems. I mean, the big problem is its direction. In that its direction's competent and solid, but uninspired, and it's basically it's like a film that needed a better director. Really, to make certain things work, because there's bits in the film where the film is focused on the writing and what the writer has done that really works, and then when it goes into the action stuff, it's very kind of it's directed as if it's the director's anonymous. You know, there's no like, punch to it. There's no like progression of action or anything. It's just things happen, things blow up, and there's no like build of character within the action. There's no build of situation within the action. Just action, which can work for this film because it's big mindless stuff. But the film itself has a lot more in its mind, and it's a shame the action scenes in an action movie are the things that let it down, and the idea stuff is the thing that really works. So the film is when it was developed for a very long time. And then the last minute had a massive rewrite in the last weeks before the film was made. Now, I think they realised the film didn't really work. It was a more serious film. So Joe Silver brought in Daniel Waters to do the last minute rewrite. And Daniel Waters rewrote it so much that he has the prime screen credit. So it was obviously a massive rewrite, which in other words, he took the general idea and redid all the characters and all the character work and a lot of the structure and everything else. So that I think the action scenes were kind of locked in. So he worked around everything else, which is why everything else is better than the action scenes. So Daniel Waters is the writer of Heathers. He wrote Batman Returns. He wrote Hudson Hawk. Those are the three big films he wrote before this. And he's one of those writers who is an unconventional writer who gets a lot of attention because he is unconventional. He does do interesting stuff. When he writes a film, you know he wrote it. It's just there's no way to ignore whose fingers are in the script with him. He's like one of the screenwriter auteurs who end up always being, unless it was with Tim Burton in Batman Returns, tends to be the person people notice the work more than the director. So he was brought in with Joe Silver because Joe Silver liked him. Had worked with him before. Even Hudson Hawk, which he wrote and Joe Silver produced, he left that fairly early on to do Batman. So he was actually away when everything went really wrong. You know, so if you see interviews about Hudson Hawk, there is a thing where he's more or less saying like the crew hated me because I left before it all went to hell. So like, he helped write it all, and his joke about Hudson Hawk is it took me to take what would have been a mediocre film into the worst films ever made, because he's a writer who just does his own thing, and if you get the right people involved it can work, but if you get the wrong people involved it'll be a weird mess, like Hudson Hawk is. I adore Hudson Hawk, but it's a weird mess, and it was just a disastrous production. So this one he was brought in to rewrite this conventional sci-fi script, and a guy sent to the future, a Rip Van Winkle story, where everything's a bit more peaceful. And he just went to town in this idea. He just really, it was perfect mix of a person and an idea, because what he did was he took the piss out of political correctness in a way that now this film feels so timely now. But it was timely then as well, because there was a big political correctness thing going on then as well, where people were offended easily and so you can't say that, you can't say that. And this happens every 20 years. There's a big kind of upturn of people who are, it can either be a liberal or conservative. There's always somebody who's offended by something. And so he's taking aim generally at people who are easily offended. And when you get to the easily offended thing, it tends to be like the easily offended, either the left or the right wing. But it's still the same feeling of, I don't want you to do what you want to do. I want you to follow the rules the way I want them. So it doesn't really matter ultimately what their ideology is. The methodology goes towards the same route. And this one, he's taking the mickey out of the left wing a little bit. But it may as well have been the right wing, because they were just as bad in the 90s. And they're just as bad now too. Both sides are really stupid, to be honest. So, it's ostensibly a parody of political correctness and the idea of knowing your place and being peaceful, and you get fined for moral offences, for swearing, for smoking, for drinking, for having sex, for doing anything. See what I mean? It's like, it could be either side. Both sides seem to hate that. Everyone having fun. Or the extreme version of both sides always seem to hate that. And the idea is that the world was a hellhole, so Cocteau, played by Nigel Hawthorne, and it's perfect Nigel Hawthorne is playing the guy, because he was in Yes Minister, who played the guy who kept anything from happening, now is a guy who keeps anything from happening in the future. Although this character he's playing, Cocteau, is not as smart as Humphrey was. He is caught out in things that Sir Humphrey would never be caught out on. But yeah, it's like this becomes bureaucracy and everyone's controlled by the rules. And into this paradise comes dissenters, because there's always dissenters who say, I don't want to do that. And they end up having been expelled from society and end up living underground and trying to survive in almost nothing. They're led by Dennis O'Leary, who's very libertarian and very much, I'll do what I want to do, whatever. So again, it's perfect casting of someone who has that ranting personality. And the film is pretty much about Stallone being thawed out to catch Wesley Snipes, who has, during his parole hearing, has escaped and is causing havoc in this new future world. Because Snipes and Stallone were caught in the first 10 minutes of the film, Snipes is the villain. He frames Stallone for manslaughter. Stallone has to go into prison too. Because there's a new cryo service they've got, they're both going to cryo and get rehabilitated in cryo. So when they come out, Snipes escapes, then they bring out Stallone to actually catch him, because he wouldn't have caught him before. And they're basically causing havoc throughout this peaceful land where everyone is, unused to violence, unused to offence. People get offended easily by almost anything in this world, which is why this film's so popular today, where people get offended by almost anything that's not within their, political sphere. And again, even though a lot of people are saying, this is very much about the left just now, the right are just as bad. The right also get offended by almost anything too. It's both sides do it. And it's about the kind of extremes that spoiled civilizations go to protect their ideal version of themselves. Like, that's what it's really getting at. I mean, it takes political correctness as a joke area, an idea of franchise wars where there's only another one franchise, which is Taco Bell, and no one reads anymore. Anything that's offensive is not allowed to be seen, and it's just like they reproduce now via technology, not sex at all. It's just technology now does this. So anyone who's doesn't behave can't reproduce. You know, where have we seen that before? So I mean, it's just like all these rules are brought in to actually make people behave. And this offends Snipes and it offends Stallone when they come back to the new world. Like, what the hell's happened? So Stallone goes through this world like a bull in a china shop. Doesn't have a clue what he's doing. Snipes just enjoys terrorizing everybody. And it becomes obvious very quickly, like painfully obvious very quickly, that Snipes has been upgraded and he's been helped by someone inside. And basically the plot is that because this society is so offended by anyone stepping out, they want to kill the people, the leaders of the people who have escaped underground. Even though these people don't do anything, all they do is cause invasions to actually steal food to survive. So this is something that could have been solved through diplomacy, but no, they don't want to deal with anyone criticising them. So they actually release a madman to kill them. Which of course means that Snipes figures all this stuff out and uses that against them to try and take over the world. And Stallone has to save the world full of these people who can't fight. So it's a parody of a future action movie. It's a parody of a society that has gotten so spoiled that it gets offended by everything. And all that stuff works because it's well written. There's so many little jokes throughout it. Everybody is... This was written really quickly. This was a script that was written with 3 weeks. The rewrite was done in 3 weeks. So I think the only reason that everything get through was because they had no time to say, wait, what? I'll just do it. Just do it. And Stallone is game for it. This is probably his funniest performance in a film. He's game for all this nonsense. He actually goes with all the weirdness of the absurdity of the situation. He's also got Sandra Bullock with him, who replaced Laurie Petty early on, because Harvey Stallone didn't go on. And she and Stallone are a really funny team, because she's naive and kooky, and he's this gruff guy who's trying to figure stuff out, and he's like, this doesn't make sense. So instead of being like the action hero, pretty quickly Stallone just becomes the voice of reason. It's like, this makes no sense. He's a straight man for all insanity, and it works really well because he clicks in very quickly. I'm a straight man. Okay, I'll be a straight man, and everyone else gets the jokes. And it's a very unselfish performance actually. Because Stallone knows he's the star of the film, so he can let other people steal scenes, and he lets Bullock go crazy with the whole film, and she takes over the film in lots of ways for all the jokes. And he seems fine with it. It's not an egotistical performance. He's like, he plays off her and has a lot of nice moments. And there's a lot of lovely stuff where he ends up to some of his therapies he learns knitting, because apparently his subconscious is a seamstress, and that helps him calm down. And it's just this whole day he knits her jumper to apologise and for something he did. And it's just this thing is, instead of playing into the idea of, oh, the past was great, he's like, nah, it really wasn't. There's lots of stupid stuff there too. And it's one of his more interesting performances because he gets to be normal and not be the big star. He just gets to be a normal person in this weird situation. So his casting works way better than it was probably planned to, because it was just a Stallone vehicle and suddenly he got a weird script with lots of fun stuff. And he just let it happen. Snipes is having a blast. Snipes knows he's playing a comic book character. He's at 2 different eye colours that sometimes switch. He's a weird haircut. He's just basically doing a Joker. And he's enjoyable. Anytime he's on screen, it's enjoyable. Anytime he's off screen, you're waiting for him to come back because he's so much fun. I mean, there is no, subtlety involved at all. But it's not, like, annoyingly cartoonish either. He keeps within some sort of common sense, even though he's playing a maniac. He understands how far he can go. And he will go as far as he possibly can. So the whole film, the casting really works because the people involved are all cast well. Even though I think it was maybe some other film and they brought another writer in and it was just luck. Like, no one planned this. This was just a case of they were lucky. They had the right actors in most of the roles already, and the other ones all got placed where they need to be placed, and the right writer. The problem with film is the direction. The direction, when the director's just covering stuff and letting the actors follow the script, it's fine. Everything works. There's no masterclass in directing there, but he just lets the actors go and do their thing, and it works. When it comes to the action scenes, it feels like the action people took over, because there is no real build to a lot of this stuff. Things happen. There are action scenes in the freeway which cost a lot of money that just look like TV show stuff because there's no like direction for the action to make it feel exciting the way like a McTiernan would do it or James Cameron would do it. There's no real drive to any of the action. Partially because they're going to A to B to do these things to save the world, and it's like, I don't care about that stuff. I like the jokes. And that's the thing with this film, the action scenes are just like there. Sometimes they get into bits where they can have some fun with it. Like the early scene where they go to the museum to get guns, because that's the only place where the guns are now. And the action there is still pretty ropey and very basic, but there's good jokes in there. Even later on, there's some fun jokes, but because the action takes over, those stuff's not as good, and the director doesn't have the skill to really make it that work, or to bring those two bits of the film together. So it's a film that's very enjoyable, but it kind of loses a lot because the action's not as good as the rest of the film. And that's kind of the issue of the film. It's kind of clunky, because I think when the Down Waters was brought in, he had to write around the action that was already in place, and that stuff became weaker because the rest of the film became stronger. And it feels unmotivated, and it feels much more like a long-headed film, probably because it was at the time. So that's the issue with this film. But the ideas are fun. The ideas are really enjoyable. And it is, of the two films I'm talking about, is the most, is by far the more better reviewed, better respected film, because it is making good points that always come up, and there's something we can always identify with, just like some people being offended and going too far to defend their right to be offended and not thinking through the consequences and how far it can go. Now we go to Starship Troopers Marauder, which is a parody film written and directed by Ed Neumeyer, who wrote the first one and wrote RoboCop. So this is his directorial debut. He didn't do another film as a director, and I can see why, because the problem with this film is direction. The second Starship Trooper film was done by Phil Tippett, and it was a much better directed film than this one is, to be honest. It was far less satirical, and it was a lower budget, but it was much better placement of camera, placement of characters within the camera, the direction of actors. It was much more confidently done. It's still a B movie, but it's a much more confident film. Marauder is trying to go back to the first film and the idea of the schlockiness, the understanding that they're parodying the kind of a lot of schlocky ideology, so they're mixing that with schlocky presentation as part of the satire. But as a lot of reviews have pointed out, this one, that works better when it's a mega budget film. When it's a lower budget film, it doesn't work as well. And you miss Paul Verhoeven, because it gets a Paul Verhoeven Presents thing. So there is a satirical element to it, but it is let down by the direction and acting. Because the acting is okay-ish, but they're going for a kind of over-the-top cheesiness, because everyone's seen the first film and gets it. But the first film worked better because some of the actors didn't know the film they were in. I mean, I kind of feel Nick Casper Van Dien kind of knew a little bit in that first film. And he kind of knows this one, and he's the best bit in it because he understands the tone he needs to take. Slightly over the top, slightly ridiculous, he understands that tone. In a way that other actors in the film don't quite get it. They've seen that film, they're trying to reach that tone, but they come across as either trying too hard to be funny, or trying too hard to be straight in a satirical way, and they haven't quite been directed to lower to the right level to match each other, or raise it to the right level. It just feels like directors trusting the actors to do it for them and not directing them as well as they should have directed them. Is that kind of feeling in the film. So when Casper Van Dien's in it, it's fine. When Amanda Donohoe is playing the one of the leaders of the Earth, she's fine. She gets the tone. The guy playing the Sky Marshal, who's been corrupted, he gets the tone, and no one else does. Everyone else is either too serious or too satirical and not in the middle. And that kind of adds to kind of aimless feel, because the adventure's not going forward with a kind of zeal of stupidity, of people who not quite know what they're doing. It just feels like they're just there, and it is kind of aimless, because the performances don't really work. And that's got to do with direction, because I'm an experienced director, and they needed someone else to get the acting right for what the script was trying to be. Also, it's not paced that well either. It's definitely a film that needed to be 10 minutes shorter at least. There's things meander onwards. Plot lines that should have been in and out quick are there for too long. And because they're on there for too long, you get a chance to sit back and actually get annoyed by them a little bit. So there's lots of stuff there that is like, it should be edited down a bit more for impact. It needed better performances. And even the camera placement of the action is not great. It's okay, it's competent. But when you're getting like vaguely competent scene after vaguely competent scene, without a kind of feeling of where the shape of the scene is, ever, it just leads to this kind of aimless quality to the film that makes you, even though you're enjoying some of the ideas I've thrown out, it makes you get a bit bored. It's also a film that, because it was low budget, they had to do a lot of like colour correction for alien planets, for planets where they'd very little time to light it, so they had to just do the lighting basic and then just add stuff and colour correction along with the effects. And you can sense there's a kind of layer of colour correction which distances you from the film as well. So it's like there's lots of stuff there that the low budget and experienced direction really affect. Now, the good thing with the film is actually the ideas. Because Ed Neumeyer's a smart guy, he's a smart ass, and he's taken the idea of what is religion to the military. Because the military does have a lot of religion tied to it. And there is a religious right feel in America, as well as religion tied to, like, Middle East. You know, lots of countries have religion tied to their military and tied to their structure, the social structure. In the first film, it feels much more like science-based, and this one, religion comes into it as a way to explore the idea of what is religion to, you know, a fascist dictatorship, and what is religion to people, and do they follow religion, or do they follow religion as a tribe? Like, this is the right religion, this is my belief, this is the right belief, and I can't follow an alien belief. The idea is that the alien from the first one, the big brain of the first one, has corrupted the mind of the Sky Marshal, and the Sky Marshal now thinks he's going to go and find God, and he thinks the bugs have got a connection to God that he doesn't have, so he wants to go and find it. And so it's the idea of how someone can get corrupted by the idea of they can find this thing that feels inside of them, and how the idea of God and the idea of connection to life can make them go and do irrational things and betray their own people. And how it also can be a powerful thing to people to help them survive bad situations. Because in the film, there's a crash and a lot of characters are there, and the people who believe in God are the ones who survive. But it's in a very cheesy way, which is a parody of the faith-based kind of narrative you get in a lot of films nowadays. And there's one character who is a non-believer who converts to become a believer at the end of it. But it's their faith. It's not the faith of not the idea of an overall God. It's the God of human beings that they believe in. because they're happy to blow up the god of the bugs. And the whole idea is like it's a satire on this idea of belief and how it can be militarized by the humans who are fascists, who are saying, who originally do not want belief in their system, and then by the end of it realize belief's actually something that can keep all these warring parties together, because they're starting to get a lot of pushback again from their own people. There's endless war that they're still not winning. And the whole idea is they've been at this war for a long time, and there's been lots of promises made how they're going to win it, and they still haven't won it. So now they're putting religion, they realise religion's a good way to actually turn them into something that's usable to have the next generation of soldiers come up by being religious. So the idea of religion, which is something simple, it can be very private to a person, is used in this film to show that people can use their private belief to push their point of view over others over time. How, like, something that is actually just a fluke of convenience can actually be seen as a sign by people to show their faith. And, of course, in the wonderfully cheesy Starship Troopers world is a military action led by your hero of the film is seen as a kind of god by the people who see it, as he comes down and helps blow up the god of the enemy. So there's lots of fun stuff in here. Just the idea, like, how awful the military is at this point, where they'll sacrifice Rico, who is one of the big heroes, and then use them for covert operation, and then proclaim him as a hero by the end of the film again. How they can promote a Sky Marshal, who they already know is a traitor, and they find a way to keep his image but kill the person. And the whole idea of how corrupt the government is, even when they're this fascist government who should be all powerful, but they also have to move their message here or there to try and cover the cracks within their own society. And how they can use the idea of religion, the idea of at least bugs believe in something, and we don't, and maybe it gives them strength, so maybe we should use that power to defeat them. And it's like this, the survival of the fittest using religion. There's lots of funny ideas in here, which makes it really frustrating that the film's not better. So again, it's like you needed a better director. You needed someone to come in and just like take charge of this thing with some of a sense of humour. You know, but they don't have Ed Newmeyer, who is a good writer of this kind of material, this satiric material. But this is it's a big budget direct-to-video film, but it's a lower budget film compared to other films made. And it just needed someone with confidence. And this film just doesn't have that in the direction. Which means there's a lot of meandering scenes. So even when you get to the bit where you get the big Marauder ships, which is basically the drop ships that people have been waiting for 3 films, you finally get them. And they're done okay, but it's tacky effects. And this film doesn't know how to cover its weak effects. The second film, because Phil Tippett was in charge and he's an effects guy, he knew how to cover the effects if they were running out of money. This one is much more obvious cheap effects. And there's a lot of ambition with some of these creatures. They're very influenced by War of the Worlds and lots of new ideas and new propaganda ideas that they have against these new bugs. But it just needed someone with more experience to be in charge of it. It just feels like everything's kind of clunky, and every time you're getting about get up and go for the plot, the direction kind of sinks it, and the acting kind of sinks it. So, I mean, it's just one of those annoying films. It could have been a lot better, but the ideas are interesting, but the execution's not. So, hope you enjoyed this video. These are both films worth watching, but Starship Troopers 3, you'll need a lot of patience with. Demolition Man's easier. Demolition Man's, strangely because it was rewritten at the last minute, it's strangely more cohesive than Starship Troopers 3, which was planned. But they were just lucky they had good people involved. I think that was a big thing in that production of Demolition Man. They experienced people throughout. While in Starship Troopers, you filmed with lower budget, enthusiastic people, but they didn't have someone there who could really put a stamp on it and actually pull it all together. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be back with another one soon. That's me for now. Bye.